Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Mr. Banks, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
President Shafiq, I understand you're very proud of the Columbia University School of Social Work, right?
Yeah, it's the oldest social work school in the country.
Yeah. So can you define for us the word Ashke normativity?
I am not familiar with that term. I believe it appeared in a student glossary that was prepared by a group of students.
It appears in the orientation guidebook that's given to all of the students at the School of Social Work, but you can't define it for us?
No, I'm saying, I'm not.
You seem to be familiar.
I don't use that term. I don't know that term. I believe that glossary was prepared by students for other students. I don't think it's a part.
But it's handed out. You agree? It's handed out to all of the students who I mean, that's what it is. It's the orientation glossary of terms for incoming students at the School of Social Work. So
I don't think it's a product of the School of Social Work. I think a group of students put this together.
It's handed out to students at the School of Social Work. Let me read to you how Ashke normativity is defined by your. You don't know if it comes from students or professors of the school, but Ashke normativity is defined as a system of oppression that favors white Jewish folks, based on the assumption that all Jewish folks are Ashkenazi or from Western Europe. So do you have a response to that definition of Ashke normativity? Is that appropriate? This is handed out to your students.
By other students. It is not a product of the faculty of Columbia University.
It is handed out to your students. Obviously, you allow this to be handed out to your students. Is that appropriate?
As I said, it is not a product of the faculty or the administration. It is something that a group of students produced. I don't agree with it. I think it's not very useful. I don't condone it.
Okay, can you help me understand something else? I didn't go to an Ivy League school, admittedly. Can you explain why the word folks is spelled F-O-L-X throughout this guidebook and in other places at the School of Social Work? What does that mean? Serious question.
They don't know how to spell? I mean, I'm not familiar with that spelling.
I'm not. I don't find it a laughing matter.
No, I'm not laughing either. I think it's.
You're denying that this is an official product of the school, but this is handed out to all of you. You are aware that it's handed out to all of your students, and you're not doing anything to stop it.
As I said, it's not an official product of the administration.
Is this how Columbia University spells the word folks?
No.
Okay. And does Columbia University recognize the word, because it's not found in the Webster's dictionary or anywhere else, Ashke normativity? Right. Is that an acceptable term at Columbia University?
Congressman, I am with you. I agree with you that I don't find this a meaningful way of.
This is handed out on your watch.
As I said, this is not a product of Columbia University
to the
faculty.
The Board of Trustees. So. Is this appropriate? Either one of you?
That term is shockingly offensive.
It's ridiculous.
Congressman.
Ma'am?
We had discussions about that memo on the board, and my understanding is that we have asked that anything that is looking as though it's orientation materials in any way be run by the dean, and I think that is the agreement. As President Shafiq has said, we're not going to be able to limit what individual students say to each other. We don't like it. It's not the kind of learning we promote at Columbia, obviously.
But you understand how this fosters an environment of anti-Semitism when the president even admits that she doesn't know if this is an official document of the school or written by students, but it's still allowed to be handed out to your students.
It's outrageous.
And it's the reason that we hold this hearing. It fosters an environment of anti-Semitism at your university. President, are you going to stop this from being handed out again to incoming students at the orientation of the School of Social Work?
We will make sure that it is not part of any orientation process that the university
President,
runs.
Shafiq, can you name a real-world example of a system of oppression that favors white Jewish folks? Can you give us an example?
No.
Do you believe that white Jewish folks are privileged, that they're oppressors?
No.
Do you believe that?
No.
This is what's being fed to your students. It's despicable. You haven't done anything about it. You should do something about it. I yield back.
Thank you. If this is a document produced by the students, I'd be interested in knowing if Columbia is paying for this document to be produced, to distribute, and be distributed. Ms. Evans, Mr. Bean, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning to you, and good morning, committee. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a big deal to run a university, and I was just making a list of all the things you have to do running a university, including recruiting applicants to go to your school, hiring professors and staff, running the plant, raising money, promoting your school. You would think on that list, which is a very long list, you would think at the very, very top is keeping students, staff, and faculty safe on your university. Why we're questioning where you put that on your list is because we see lack of consequences. We see the answer is always it's under investigation, or we put that group on double secret probation, which really isn't holding anybody accountable. Chancellor Block, on November 15th, 2023, a Jewish UCLA professor and her husband went to a counter-protest at a UCLA Students for Justice in Palestine rally wearing pro-Israel t-shirts. They heard students chant, "Slaughter the Jews" in Arabic, and were threatened by students who said, "We will find you, we will take care of you." The next day, a UCLA graduate student from the rally stalked her husband at his office. 2 weeks later, more and more hatred and anti-Semitism, including garbage topped with a swastika and the words "loudmouth Jew" were left outside the doorstop. All this was reported to you and other UCLA officials, including the identity of who's doing it. What disciplinary actions did UCLA take in response?
Thank you for the question. We immediately alerted the police, and the police did an investigation, and I think that, I don't know if that's ongoing or not, but police were involved immediately in this incident.
Did anybody get kicked off campus? Did anybody
I don't know what the
kicked out
outcome
of
was,
school?
but police were immediately notified of this issue and interviewed individuals and attempted to identify who was responsible.
On November 28th, mass protesters cutting down hostage posters threatened and chased a Jewish student while brandishing knives. They chased him on campus. The incident was reported to police and to UCLA officials. Can you tell us what disciplinary action, including, did anybody get kicked off campus? Did anybody get expelled?
I don't know in that particular case, but the police were notified and they attempted to identify these individuals holding the knives.
So you can see, gentlemen, this is why we question where it is on the list, because we see the videos, we see everything, and we meet with students who say that it's, and we see the video just now, it breaks my heart. You can't even go to class. It's hard enough going to one of your schools, but to have to worry about it. President Schill, I know that you're rewriting the code of conduct at Northwestern. It sounds like you're going to start, you probably already started on it. Is calling for the death of Jews, is that going to be against your code of conduct?
It already is.
It already is. So you can't yell words that we all know, intifada and others, that are hateful to the Jewish and calling for the death and destructions. That's going to be...
Anything that calls for the death and destruction of Jewish people, whether here or abroad, is a code of conduct violation, and the code of conduct will be investigated, and there's a variety of disciplinary possibilities that will follow from that.
Very good. It's an open question. Here's your chance, presidents, to prove to this committee, to the American people, to Congress, your teams back home, that you rank the safety of students and faculty. Have you expelled anybody? Have you fired people, these hate groups on your campus? I know there's free speech, but this is clearly, as President Schill has already commented on, it's a real crossing of the line. President Holloway, what say you?
Any exhortation of violence threatening students or the community or harassment is a violation of our code of conduct.
And you've expelled students and you've banned groups from your campus to say this will not be tolerated at Rutgers.
That is correct.
So I know my time is about up, but I was in Israel this past a few months ago and eating dinner with a family, and we were talking about how scary it is to live in Israel. The family says what we're really worried about is our daughter, and ironically, our daughter is starting Rutgers in the fall. We are really fearful of her safety coming to America. Should she have anything to fear at Rutgers?
I'm very sorry to hear that the family feels this way.
Well, they're scared. They're scared. They see the video that we see of students, which is what happened at UCLA and others across America, and they see very little consequences of breaking the laws and the policy because no one seems to be held accountable. Are you going to hold people accountable,
Yeah,
Mr. President?
May I answer? Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir, absolutely. One thing I want to make clear is that in any instance of the kind of language, behavior you've been talking about, we've responded immediately with whether it's student affairs police, sometimes campus police, sometimes state police, even the FBI, to help us bring to conclusion.
Thank you, President. Madam Chair, I yield back. Thank you.
Ms. Omar, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. President Shafiq, I wanted to get a clarification earlier. One of my colleagues asked you, have you seen anti-Muslim protests on campus?
I have seen, we have had pro-Israeli demonstrations on campus.
No.
But
just
not
a protest that was
not-
against Muslims.
No, I have
you
not
seen
seen
one against Arabs?
No, I have not.
Have you seen one against Palestinians?
No, I have not.
Have you seen one against Jewish people? Have you seen a protest saying we are against Jewish people?
No, I have seen.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. There has been a rise in targeting and harassment against anti-war protesters because it's been pro-war and anti-war protesters is what it seems like, correct?
Correct. There has been.
Thank you. Activists on campus, including Jewish students, Black and Brown, Arab and Muslim students. How many of the organizations that were canceled in Colombia involved Jewish students?
One of the organizations is called Jewish Voices for Peace.
Yes. And encompassed of Jewish students?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. There's been a recent attack on the democratic rights of students across the country. I was appalled to learn that in April, Colombia suspended and evicted 6 students for their involvement in the pro-Palestinian panel event on campus. It happened that all 6 students were arbitrarily targeted after the university brought in a team of private and former police investigators. These investigators harassed, intimidated Palestinian students at their homes, demanding to see students' private text messages and sent threatening emails to the leaders of those pro-Palestinian groups. I would like to ask you to speak a little bit more to this situation and ask you if you guys have utilized private former police investigators before, or is this the first time?
So this was a very serious case. We had students who, on an online
If you could
call,
shorten your answer, that would be really appreciated.
of course, who invited people who were inciting violence, and that is unacceptable. And so we needed to get to the bottom of it, and so that's why we brought private investigators along with notifying
how
the
secure
FBI.
were you these students that you evicted and suspended were involved? Did you do any investigation? Was there a hearing?
They refused to cooperate with the investigation, and so until they do so, they are suspended.
Okay, thank you. And then in January, there was an incident involving students that were protesting that were attacked with a toxic chemical substance, leaving many hospitalized. A lot of them did not receive support from the school administrators. Can you speak to what is happening with the investigation, if you all are cooperating, and why weren't the students provided any support after they've experienced that attack?
So this is still with the police, and as far as we know, we think it was an odorous substance, and we did reach out to all of those students who said they were affected. Many of them didn't want support. We also
It took you guys more than 4 days to reach out to students.
No, I don't believe that's correct.
Okay, will you give me a written response with the fact that you all responded right away to those students?
Yes, I would be happy to do that.
All right, appreciate that. And it looks like there's been a lot of doxing and harassment that has taken place. What protections are a student being provided?
We created a doxing resources group to support students. There were many students who were affected by this. Muslim students, Jewish students, and completely, other students. That group has, we had 90 students reach out to that group to get support in terms of both technical support, legal support, privacy scrubbing, and so on.
And before I run out of time, I wanted to ask what do your rules say about professors that harass students online, like Professor Shai Davidar has done, and professors who directly attack you as the president as a coward and a liar?
So, as president, I'm used to being attacked, but attacking our students is unacceptable. And in that case, we've had more than 50 complaints about that professor, and he is currently under investigation for harassment and
I would love a
discrimination.
follow-up on that as well. Thank you so much. I yield back.
President Hallway, is physically blocking students from entering your campus based on their race, religion, or ethnicity an expellable offense?
I'm sorry, could you, the very beginning of the question.
Is physically blocking students from entering your campus based on their race, religion, or ethnicity an expellable offense?
That's certainly a violation of our university standards, sir.
Is it an expellable offense?
Potentially it would be, sir. It would depend on the circumstance of that specific instance.
President Schill, is excluding students, blocking students from entering campus based on their race, religion, or ethnicity an expellable offense at your university?
I would imagine it is a violation of our conduct code.
Is it an expellable offense?
I'm sorry?
Is it an expellable offense to physically obstruct students from entering campus?
A range of disciplines up to and including being expelled for violation.
Chancellor Block, is physically stopping students from entering your campus based on their race, religion, or ethnicity an expellable offense?
Again, there's a disciplinary process for students. It could be.
Can we please play a video?
Everybody, look at this. Look at this. I'm a UCLA student. I deserve to go here. We pay tuition. This is our school. And they're not letting me walk in. My class is over there. I want to use that entrance. Why can't I go? Will you let me go in? This can be over in a second. Just let me and my friends go in to class.
We're not engaging in that.
Then you can move. Will you move?
We're not engaging in that.
Okay, we're going. We're going. I'm going in. I have my hands up. I'm not hurting them.
Chancellor Block, were those students who formed the blockade, do you know?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Were those students who formed that blockade?
I don't know whether they're students or non-affiliates. I don't know. They were masked.
You don't know?
I do not know.
Have any of them been disciplined?
Have any been disciplined yet?
Those people on the video who formed the blockade, have they been disciplined?
After the response, after we learned about that, I sent a message to all of our student affairs people to make sure that pathways are open for everyone, and I sent a message out to our community.
So I'm going to take that as a no. We have the evidence right here on video. A student being blocked from entering your campus based on his Jewish identity, and there's been no consequence whatsoever. Is that what you're telling us?
No, I did not say that. I said this is being investigated, and we'll see what happens with the disciplinary process. I did not say that.
President Schill, if the during Meadows agreement, if the university does not live up to its end of the bargain, do the protesters have a right to reestablish the encampment?
The protest on Deering Meadow, any encampment on Deering Meadow, is a violation of the university's
Yes, but you
conduct
reached
code.
an agreement where you said that that the encampment will disband if, and you agreed to certain conditions. So if you don't follow those conditions, can the encampment reestablish itself?
We are planning on following those conditions.
But if you don't, would they be within their rights to reestablish the encampment?
That is a hypothetical issue. If I commit to something, I do it.
You said you have great respect for the Anti-Defamation League. Is that correct?
I do.
And as I'm sure you're aware, the Anti-Defamation League has called for your resignation. They said President Schill capitulated to hatred and bigotry and empowered and emboldened those who have used intimidation, harassment, and violence to achieve their ends. Rather than hold them accountable as he pledged he would, President Schill gave them a seat at the table and normalized their hatred against Jewish students. Why is the ADL wrong?
I believe that at this moment, leaders need to make hard decisions. I believe that we got a good result. We were able to get rid of the major anti-Semitic event on our campus with no violence.
By institutionalizing anti-Semitism and agreeing to the demands of anti-Semites. Mr. President Schill, in my view, you are the easiest case that we have dealt with. You agreed to the demands of those who are trying to change university policy in an anti-Semitic way, and you rewarded their tactics of using force. This is what the ADL has said. It's not what I have said. Excuse me, sir. That was not a question. Excuse me, sir.
We agreed to none of the demands that were presented to us.
And here today, you announced it as the Deering-Meadows agreement. Here today, you've made preposterous statements like it wasn't practical to consult with Jewish students prior to acceding to those demands. So I would associate myself with the comments of the ADL, and I think that if the university does not move to change its leadership, then it will be endorsing that institutionalization, that normalization of anti-Semitism on campus. President Holloway, are you currently under consideration to be the president of Yale University?
No, I am not.
You are not. So you're planning to stay at Rutgers?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Mr. Bean, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. Columbia beats Harvard and UPenn. Y'all have done something that they weren't able to do. You've been able to condemn anti-Semitism without using the phrase, it depends on the context. But the problem is, action on campus doesn't match your rhetoric today. And you're saying the right things. You're saying we're not going to tolerate it, but we see the videos. We see what's happening on social media. And just this morning, all of these students, your students, their message is quite different. Their message is one of fear. How about that? They can't walk across campus without getting the F word yelled at them, F Jews, Intifada, all kinds of things. My heart aches for them. It should be hard academically at Columbia, but it shouldn't be hard to walk across campus, and it is. So words don't match your actions, and you can have 200 meetings. You can put people on double secret probation as you have. You can write very strongly worded letters. Don't ever do it again. But that's not solving the problems. Look at the fear in their eyes right now. One of them said this morning in a press conference that we got to spend some time with that security on campus, are you ready for this? Security on campus told them, remove anything that identifies you as Jewish when things get hot. That's the way to stay safe on Columbia's campus is don't look Jewish and you'll be safe. Is that your policy, Madam President? To stay safe, just don't look Jewish?
Not at all. And I think,
So the stuff, have you met with them? I know you've met. I know you met with them 200 times. But why is their message different from yours? Why are they saying it happens all the time, every week, going to class? Are you aware of that? It's a yes or no question. Are you aware that there's a problem on campus? You're aware? Yes is the right answer. You're aware. As president of the board, Ms. Shipman, thank you for being here. Are you aware, though, that this once prestigious university's reputation is just going down the toilet because of all of the anti-Semitism that's flourishing on campus? Are you aware?
I'm aware of how serious this moment is. I appreciate your urgency. We're not done. I recognize
have we quadrupled security on campus? Have we expelled students? How many students have we expelled?
We have massively increased our security capacity.
Have we expelled anybody? There's so many hate groups on campus. I want y'all to know there's got to be, this is America. It's 2024, and you shouldn't fear going to the library just because of your faith. Madam Chair, I yield the rest of my time to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Stefanik.
Dr. Owens, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me just start off by saying that courage and leadership finds itself in the moment. And I must say, we, as a nation, we're seeing that it was not available. We did not see that in these college campuses. What I think we were looking for was strength, fairness to all, including our Jewish students, wisdom, and the recognition that hatred cannot be negotiated with. I'm really curious. I'm trying to understand how you have negotiations. And by the way, President Shield, would you have the same patience, the same strategy if these were KKK white supremacists that were trying to negotiate that was actually attacking and intimidating black people? Would you have the same patience with that? What'd you do with
Representative Owens, thank you for the question. I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals like that.
This is how you deal with hatred. I'm trying to give you a kind of understanding that we're talking about Jewish students. If it was black students against KKK instead of pro-Hamas, would you deal with them the same exact way as you dealt with these two students?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals.
All right, so the answer is no. Okay. Let's move on. I'll just say this. It's striking that you decided to negotiate a sweetheart deal with pro-Hamas students and professors who denied October 7th. Either they deny it, they celebrate it, or they simply don't care. I looked at that as pure evil. Mr. Shield, now, how much money has Northwestern University received from Qatar sources, including Qatar-connected entities at the Qatar Foundation?
The amount that we have received from the Qatar Foundation to fund our campus in Qatar, all of the resources that we have gotten, there's been a lot.
It doesn't take, I'm looking for short answers. I only have about 3 minutes left, please, okay? So how much?
I don't have the dollar number. You have a check that says.
Oh yeah. Let's say between 500 and 7 million.
You have a check that says that amount.
Okay.
Every dollar has gone to the operation of the campus or the management of the campus.
Would you mind doing me? We'd like to have a complete, transparent accounting to just how much exactly is coming from this. Now, are you aware this is the same Qatar government that has partnered with the currently harbors the leaders of Hamas, and estimated to have given the terrorist organization of Hamas about $1.8 billion. Are you aware of that? Qatar?
They are harboring those leaders at with the
knowledge. Are you aware that
the United States government supports
yes
that and has supported
that? Are you aware
that?
1.8 billion has been given to Hamas from Qatar?
Pardon me?
Are you aware that terrorists have given that Qatar has given the terrorists $1.8 billion to Hamas?
This is not my area of expertise.
All right, you're not aware. Okay. Are you aware that the Iranian officials travel in and out of Doha to meet with Hamas?
This is not in my area of expertise.
Do you think, if this was true, do you think it would be a good idea for the University of Northwestern to partner with a government that harbors terrorist Hamas and Iranian operatives who fund terrorism? Yes or no?
I'm not going to engage in yes or no answers.
Obviously, you don't have a problem with that. Northwestern's School of Journalism is a formal partnership with.
I'm sorry, you telling me what my views are.
A formal partnership with the Qatar media outlet Al Jazeera. Did you know that?
I'm sorry?
Did you know that your Northwestern School of Journalism is a formal partnership with Al Jazeera?
I, in fact, just found out about that last week.
Okay, well, let me make you aware of it then, because Al Jazeera, because of their pro-Hamas reporting, the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, asked the Qatar Prime Minister to tone down Al Jazeera's anti-Israel incitement. Also, it was Israel, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt that had blocked Al Jazeera because of their pro-Hamas mouthpiece. My understanding is that you have a contract with the Qatar Foundation that expires at the end of 2027-2028 academic year, which now that you know about Qatar, would you be willing to, are you going to still renew that contract?
The review of that contract is being done by the provost office, and
okay,
it will
so
be.
It is. So I'm sorry.
I just finish
I'm
the
sorry.
answer?
These are really short questions. Knowing that Al Jazeera is a mouthpiece for Hamas, are you willing to end that partnership?
The decision with respect to the Qatar campus is ultimately the Board of Trustees, and I actually am concerned by the agreement that you're talking about with Al Jazeera.
Well,
and we are going to look into it.
Yeah, okay. this is an issue that I'm thankful we're pulling the curtains back, because this is not just beginning now. Obviously, it's been going on a long, long time. We're going to make sure we keep follow up on this. Thank you, and I'll yield back.
Mr. Owens, your time has expired. Mrs. May.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Professor Shafiq, I understand that all Columbia students go through an orientation that includes anti-discrimination training. Does that training include comprehensive education about anti-Semitism, including the central role Israel plays in Judaism?
Thank you for that question. In the past, that was not the case, and that is something we are actively working on.
But is that taking place right now?
We have trained our student affairs staff across Columbia, but
I think time is of the essence, and I hope you will commit to getting that training in place immediately.
Yes, it is being put in place now for our incoming class.
Okay. The report issued by your task force on anti-Semitism says that discrimination and harassment are not protected speech. We have seen chants at Columbia calling to globalize the Intifada, and much worse. During the Intifada, Palestinian suicide bombers blew up Israelis on city buses, at restaurants, even at weddings. And in fact, Columbia alum Sarah Duker was killed in a bus bombing in Jerusalem in 1996. Given this history, are calls to globalize the Intifada acceptable at Columbia?
So
just a yes or no answer, please.
I personally find it unacceptable. Our current rules have not specified that as not acceptable, but we have sent a very clear message to our community that that kind of language is unacceptable.
I certainly hope you will rectify that in your statements. The task force report also states that anti-Semitism includes efforts to rationalize or endorse the murder of Jews or the destruction of the state of Israel. And I'd like to submit for the record an article written by Professor Joseph Massad that rationalizes the murder of Jews and the destruction of the state of Israel. Why is that professor still teaching at Columbia?
As I said, we have mechanisms in place where faculty cross the line. We have many cases, and when we have any complaints from students saying they feel uncomfortable, there are disciplinary processes in place.
Is he still teaching?
He is still on the faculty.
Is he still teaching?
I'm not. I don't want to misspeak. I'm not sure he's teaching at the moment.
The task force report also states that the mission of a great university requires uncompromising rigor in uncovering facts and analyzing ideas. Now, the article that I just asked to be submitted to the record demonstrates that this professor has an extreme one-sided view of the long-standing conflict in the Middle East, which views Israel as illegitimate and any attempt to destroy Israelis as legitimate. Is teaching this one-sided view of the conflict in the Middle East in line with your mission to educate your students with uncompromising rigor in uncovering facts and analyzing ideas?
Our objective is to give students a broad exposure to many ideas. We have about 50 courses at the moment which cover Israeli and Jewish studies, the Middle East, and it's important that they be exposed to all of those views.
But no one student can take all 50 courses. Is there an effort to make sure that both sides, of course, I don't agree that the murder of Jews and the destruction of Israel is a side that should be taught, but are there, for example, any professors in your Middle East Studies department who believe that Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish state?
In fact, the head of that department is an Israeli. And
that doesn't answer my question.
No. And we have many faculty at Columbia who clearly would take that view. I should also say that most of these courses are electives and students can choose which professors they want to study with. But I would, obviously we want them to have a broader range of views.
So I am worried about how we get at the underlying issue that there is such anti-Semitism on your college campus. Now, step one is to make sure that there is rigorous anti-Semitism training in your anti-discrimination course that all your students are supposed to take. Step two is having that same training for your faculty members. Yes. And step three is making sure that your Middle East Studies department does not foment anti-Semitism by teaching that Israel is illegitimate as a state, and that Jews should be murdered to get rid of Israel. Is that a problem?
Congresswoman, I agree with you. We are in active discussions with Ted Deutsch of the American Jewish Congress on the kinds of educational programs that they have developed, and we are looking at how we can integrate them. We've done some of that already with our student affairs staff, and we are working with the anti-Semitism task force to see how to do it for next year.
I believe you have a core curriculum at Columbia. I suggest you insert that, and I'd like to close by asking that a statement by my colleague, Representative Richie Torres, also be entered into the record. With that, my time has expired, and I yield back.
Without objection, the material the gentlewoman asked to be put in the record will be placed in the record. Recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll direct this first to Dr. Shafiq. What does it say about college campuses like Columbia's today that we're sitting here having a congressional hearing to discuss significant anti-Semitism prevalent to a large degree on campuses like yours, and pro-terrorism sympathies on campuses like yours? How troubling is that to you? What does it say about our college campuses today that we're here doing this?
I am very troubled. I would say that we have 37,000 students, and I think the numbers that we are talking about who are crossing these lines are, a very, very small number of
Let me
our
stop
total
you there.
students.
Let me stop you there. Have there been any anti-Islamic demonstrations on campus, any anti-Muslim demonstrations on campus, any anti-Arab demonstrations on campus? Anything like that happened?
There have been many pro-Israeli demonstrations on our
No,
campus.
that's not what I asked you.
But there have there have been many incidents.
The answer would be no, correct?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
There would be
to the board
incidents.
members, if I may, what does it say about our college campuses today that we're having a hearing about anti-Semitic sympathies on campus, expressions on campus on a large scale, and pro-terrorist expressions on campus on a significant scale? What does that say about college campuses today like Columbia's? Anyone want to answer that?
Congressman, I think it says we have a lot of work to do. It's shocking.
What does it say about what's happening on our college campuses that this would even be an issue to such large degree that we're holding yet another congressional hearing on this subject?
I think, personally, I think it says that we have lost our way in terms of what we expect from each other in a learning community and in our society. I think we have got to learn to listen to all sorts of diversity, and we have to commit to speech that isn't laced with hate and isn't just meant to provoke for
Right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your efforts to try to answer that. President Shafiq, as you know, on March 24, just 3 weeks ago, and 5 months after the October 7 terrorist attack in Israel, a coalition of a reported 94 Columbia student organizations led by Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Force for Peace held an event with guest speakers who are connected to and supportive of known terrorist organizations. Khalid Barakat spoke at the event. He's been identified as a member of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a group that the United States, has designated a foreign terrorist organization. Another speaker was Charlotte Cates, who's affiliated with the Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network, which is designated as a terrorist group by Israel. What does it say that we allowed that event to take place on campus, remotely, but hosted on campus, held on campus? What does that say about Columbia today?
We did not allow that event to happen. The students applied to host that event at Columbia. We twice said no. They then tried to host it at our neighbor Barnard, who also said no. They then decamped to a dorm room and held it online. We immediately, as soon as we knew, notified the FBI. We brought in special investigators, and we
let me stop you there.
suspended the students
When did you
involved.
learn about this event was going to take place, or was being tried to be held to take place?
We learned on the day, and then we immediately contacted the FBI.
Were any safe spaces provided or other supportive measures created for students who might have felt threatened by the efforts to have this on campus, to have these speakers speaking remotely, at least on campus? Was there any measures taken for those students who might have felt threatened by this?
They were in a private space. And as I said, all of the students who were involved in organizing that event have been suspended.
All right, one of
And
the
that was
primary
done within 24 hours.
organizer of the event was the Students for Justice in Palestine, which was suspended on November 10, but that was 4 months before the event took place. How could they be able to organize an event on campus? I mean, what entities or groups would you prohibit from organizing an event on campus? What's the criteria for approval or disapproval to be able to do that?
So we were one of the first universities to suspend Students for Justice in Palestine and the Jewish Voices
But they were
for
still
Peace
able to hold an event.
because they didn't abide by our rules and held unsanctioned events. We quickly realized, I think that was a very powerful symbol to say if student groups don't abide by the rules, there will be consequences for them.
I'm sorry,
and
with
that-
8 seconds left, I'm going to have to stop you. The Columbia University newspaper contained an op-ed from the Columbia University Apartheid Divest signed by 94 supporting student groups that were part of the coalition with Students for Justice for Palestine that organized the event. I would just like a response afterwards in writing as to whether or not these groups who were also supported, the other 94 groups, whether or not they would have been suspended or have funds pulled or any consequence of those other 94 groups, as reported in the Columbia University newspaper. Apologize, Madam Chairman, for going over a little bit. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You know, I'm really puzzled about how a university with such a prestigious reputation, such immense resources, and with such a storied history arrived at such a dissolute and depraved place. It's very stunning. Just to address these questions to the board members, in the last 20 years, have there been Columbia professors or students who have been forced to retire or leave the university because of denouncements by fellow staff members or accusations by students, pressures from outside groups?
I've been on the board. This is my 6th year on the board, but I don't recall actions of that nature happening.
Ms. Shipman?
Yeah, I've been on the board 10 years, and neither do I.
Professor Serban, you don't recall his leaving, believes that the university was communist, was his words. You don't recall that?
No.
Professor Shizer, you've been there some years. Are you aware, publicly or privately, that any of your colleagues have left the university either because they believe their beliefs aren't welcome or because they feel like they have no upward mobility because of their beliefs?
I'm not remembering a case like that, sir.
So no one's come to you privately and said, hey, Columbia's not the place for me. This is hostile because of I'm a conservative or I'm Jewish or I hold any beliefs that seem to be contrary to the university.
So look, I'm a conservative at Columbia Law School. I was dean for 10 years. Place has been good to me.
Are there a lot of people like you, or are you afraid to speak out?
But I do want to say that I am not the norm, and I'd love more conservatives.
So how much investment, again to the board members, how much investment has Columbia received by foreign governments, their donors, or significant donations from foreign individuals from countries like China, Qatar, Saudi Arabia? I know that the committee's asked for that information. Do you have that number for us today?
I don't have that number to hand.
Are you aware of significant donations from any of those locations to the university in your tenure in 6 years?
I'm aware that we receive funds from at least some of those countries.
Which ones specifically?
I don't remember all the ones you mentioned. Did you mention China, sir?
I did.
Okay. China sends many students to Columbia University, and my understanding is the state pays their tuition.
President Shafiq, are faculty and staff required to sign DEI statements to be employed or to continue their employment at Columbia?
No.
They're not required to provide DEI statements. I'm pretty sure that's part of your employment process, isn't that right?
No, I think some departments ask faculty to talk about what they bring that's different to that department or to that role. And that's an optional thing that they can add to an employment.
It's optional, and if you refuse to, then it has no bearing on your hiring at the school? Is that really what you're saying?
Frankly, I think it depends on the needs of that particular department. You know, if the math department or the biology department or the neuroscience department has issues around, they're missing certain perspectives on their faculty, they might pay more attention to it. Others might not. I think it's very much dependent on
So the
whether
DEI
the skill is
policy
missing.
at Columbia doesn't require statements from faculty administrators in order as part of their HR process. That's what you're saying?
We don't have a central DEI office at Columbia. We have schools and faculties who think about what are the different perspectives that they've got on their faculty, and then they make choices about what's missing in terms of perspectives, backgrounds, skills that are needed for the faculty, and that they have people who are working on those issues at the school and departmental level.
Personally, I think that you're in deep denial about the culture at Columbia in terms of the actual openness to views that differ from the culture of the school, where your money comes from, the disruption of classes, and the DEI statements. I just want to enter into the record, Madam Chairwoman, a webpage from the U.S. Holocaust Museum website that describes the Nazi takeover of German universities in the 1930s. And frankly, I see the parallels as striking. It's entitled German Universities in the Nazi Regime, something like that. And it really talks about that there were denouncements of professors for views that weren't consistent. It talks about the influence of outside groups, particularly money. It's where statements of loyalty were required in order to continue at the university, and that the teaching quality dropped significantly because politics and adherence to politics triumphed over
Thank you, Mr.
adherence
Williams.
to
Without objection, what you're requesting will be placed in the record.
academic excellence. Thank you. I yield.
Mr. Moran, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Owens, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Back in December, I made a statement that I've seen this movie before, and that seems like it's not changed. I grew up in the Deep South, 1960s, days of KKK, Jim Crow, and segregation. My first exposure to white Americans wasn't until I was 16 years old. I was one of 4 black athletes to integrate a formerly all-white high school, and remember vividly the morning after Martin Luther King's assassination, walking to our high school courtyard and seeing spray painted on the wall in red, "Ding dong, the king is dead." Let's fast forward to the experience of 2024. If I came to Columbia campus, what would be the response if members of my race were harassed by KKK bigots, mocked, called an N-word, spit upon, hit with a stick, ostracized? Would these same bigots and racists be allowed to protest at Columbia's campus spewing anti-black hate speech? And instead of wearing the white KKK hoods, would these cowards be granted free speech status as they hid their faces behind black masks and full head scarves? At a total cost of $90,000 per year, would black students be forced to attend the class of a tenured Columbia professor while discussing the past events of a massacre of black men and women and children, black girls being raped and black men being lynched, and would speak in glowing terms of this event as stunning, awesome, and astonishing? President, I'd like to ask you, would this treatment of black Americans be tolerated for 1 second?
What you've described, Congressman, is completely unacceptable. I, too, grew up in the South in the 1960s and share that experience.
So yes or no, would this be tolerated for 1 second?
I beg your pardon?
Would this be tolerated, this treatment of black Americans, for 1 second on Columbia's campus?
Absolutely not. And
okay. I just want to continue this, because if this would not be tolerated for blacks, why has it been for months and years? We're talking about a professor who goes back 20 years now. This guy has been around a long time. So why is it that Jewish Americans can then be treated by these bigots and bullies in this manner?
It is not tolerated, and it is not acceptable. And over the last 6 months, we have done everything we can and have worked tirelessly to improve our policies.
Okay, let me just say this real quickly. Let me tell you why I think these two standards are prevalent. At Columbia's the core teaching values are DEI and CRT, which are racist and anti-Semitic teachings of Marxism. The racist beliefs are that blacks are hopeless, weak, and oppressed race that needs protection and pity of the white race. Anti-Semitic beliefs are that Jewish race are the oppressor race, and that all minorities need to be protection from them, and therefore hated. If you ever wonder why the heinous crimes of October 7th never moved the needle of empathy at Columbia, this is why. I personally think that it takes a true lowlife, repugnant human being to make the statement that the massacre of innocent men and women and children, the raping of girls, the beheading of children, the burning alive of human beings was stunning, awesome, and astonishing. But what truly speaks volumes is the moral compass of Columbia, that this rabid anti-Semite is still on your payroll today. He's gotten cocky, and for 20 years he's done the same thing. It's just a little tip of the iceberg of what's going on there and what's being taught in our classes. There's a statement from a Jewish student. It is impossible to exist as a Jewish student at Columbia without running face first into anti-Semitism every single day. Jew hatred is so deeply embedded into the campus culture that it's become casual among students, faculty, and neglected by administrators. Do you agree with this statement, President?
I have met those students and heard those words in the listening sessions that I've been holding. I believe in leadership by presence and walking around, and I have listened to those students, and it has distressed me hugely.
Let me just, I'm sorry, I hate to cut you off. I just have a few seconds here. Let me tell you what my major concern is. Thousands of Columbia students coming from countries that hate America and the other democracy in that region, Israel. How does this work? International students paying a total of $90,000 a year up front, skip classes to demonstrate, bully Americans, burn American flags, stop traffic in our countries as they shout death to America. In some kind of way, they still get a degree. I think most of us, unless they're genius, most of us spend 100% of our time trying to pass our courses, particularly $90,000 per year. I'm running out of time. I'll just say this. I'd like to know how many of these folks are actually graduating and what degrees are and how they're getting paid to come to our campus and bully our kids the way they are right now. And with that, I'd like to yield back.
Thank you. Mrs. Hayes, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to start, before I get into my questions, by saying that I am a woman of deep personal faith, and my faith forces me to respect the faith of others. So the injection of biblical theology into this committee hearing is inappropriate. But if we were to talk about that, I would say that my faith is used as a shield to protect others and not a sword to hate or harm others. I guess I'd call myself a Matthew 25 Christian. But there's a few things that I would like to clarify or have the witnesses clear up before I get into my questions. Professor Shizer, my colleague suggested that students are getting away with hitting.
Recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to thank each of you for being here. The name Columbia is very important to me. I represent Columbia, South Carolina, with Mayor Dan Rickerman, okay? I'm very grateful that my wife, Roxanne, is a graduate of Columbia College in Columbia, South Carolina. And so, so please keep the name positive. Aside from that, I'm also very grateful that I grew up in the holy city of Charleston, South Carolina. And so I grew up with an appreciation of the people of Jewish heritage. At the time of the American Revolution, the largest Jewish population in the New World was in Charleston, South Carolina. The first provincial constitution to recognize Judaism as religion was South Carolina. The first Jewish American elected official in the New World was in the provincial assembly. Sadly, the first Jewish American killed in the Revolution was in Charleston, South Carolina. That's the environment I grew up in, and that's why I just can't believe the environment we're in today. And and it's just got to be addressed. And the barbaric mass murder of October 7th by Iranian puppets of Hamas invading Israel has shockingly revealed that many college campuses are sickeningly anti-Semitic and time again are defending the maniacal Hamas agenda. The agenda needs to be known. They've published it, and it's the Hamas Covenant of August 18, 1988. And it, in Article 7, makes clear to chase every Jew behind a rock and tree until you find the last Jew and kill him behind the rock. And so this is not an accident. And additionally, we need to identify, too, that Hamas is a puppet of Iran, as is Hezbollah, who on January 28th killed 3 young American Army reservists. And so this should not be forgotten, the type of people we're dealing with. College campuses have descended from the coveted citadels of intellectual freedom to illiberal arenas of intolerance and bigotry, full of closed-minded intolerance that is protected by left-wing academia. All Americans in good faith want college education to be meaningful students to achieve the American dream, free from harassment, intimidation, and destructive and mindless indoctrination. And I particularly support diversity of intellectual ideology. It should be, when we talk about diversity, good gosh, it should be ideological too, not mandated Soviet-style education. And so I wrote a column for the Washington Times op-ed December 7th last year, explaining my concern about anti-Semitism. And President Shafiq, there are dozens of anti-Semitic incidents documented in the committee's February 12th document request letter, legal complaints by students, and student videos. Sadly, the documents Columbia produced to the committee show the university only suspended 3 students for anti-Semitic incidents between October 7th and March 24th with the Resistance 101 event. All 3 of those were lifted or reduced upon adjudication. What standard does Columbia use to decide the anti-Semitic conduct rises to the level of what you've identified as suppression?
Thank you very much. And I wanted to say I share your deep concern about anti-Semitism and your concern about diversity of thought, which is something that's very important to me in my role as president of Columbia. I think the fundamental issue, and I think this is something the Anti-Defamation League has said in its own work, the ultimate solution to fighting this horrible form of bigotry is education. And that is a huge focus for us at Columbia. We're changing the way we do orientation for our incoming students to make sure that they're educated about anti-Semitism. And we're also looking at expanding our academic offer. We already have about 50 courses at Columbia on Israel, on Jewish studies, on the Middle East. And we need to expand that in order to ultimately deal with this horrible problem.
Well, we would support every effort. And then, hey, I want to express concern too, and that is the Columbia School of Social Work has a glossary which identifies capitalism as a system of economic oppression. I hope that your academics visit Pyongyang. I'm one with former Congressman Elliot Engel. I've been to Pyongyang. I've seen the benefits of socialism and communism. They have reduced what was the wealthiest part of Korea into the poorest, with a per capita income of $867. South Korea, capitalist South Korea, $44,000. The thought of saying that capitalism is oppressive is so insulting and stupid and historically incorrect. And communism, socialism, fascism do not work. Capitalism does. That's why America's most successful country on earth. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Takano.
President Schill, you said there's been a wide range of discipline. After testifying, there have been 0 suspensions, 0 expulsions, and you said discipline has been meted out. How has discipline been meted out?
Discipline has run the gamut. That is the discipline that's already completed. Run the gamut from meetings with student affairs staff at the very lowest level of severity up to disciplinary probation, which means if there is another offense, students will be expelled or suspended.
And you testified when I asked about the Deering-Meadows agreement with the visiting Palestinian faculty members. Isn't it true that the university committed to fundraise above and beyond its current commitment as part of the Deering-Meadows agreement?
I did not commit. I don't know who told you that.
Well, I'm reading it from the statement put out by the university that says, quote, the university commits to fundraise to sustain this program beyond this current commitment, end quote. I'm reading your words put out by your office.
That is a program that is not just about the Middle East. That is a program that is about war-torn areas all across this world.
But
so Ukraine,
isn't it a fact,
for example, would be
isn't
included.
it a fact that that was part of the agreement to increase the commitment to that?
I don't think the agreement increased the commitment.
It did. I'm reading it for you. You put this out from your office. Quote, the university commits to fundraise to sustain this program beyond this current commitment. Is that no longer part of the Deering Meadows agreement?
When I hear beyond this commitment,
I'm reading what your office put out.
Are you asking me to interpret what my
No,
office
I'm asking
put out,
you,
or are
isn't
you
that the
just
fact?
reading it?
What does beyond this current commitment mean?
What I read that to be is beyond this current commitment, the rest of the world and over time.
That's not, it's specifically focused on the Palestinian faculty members. Let me ask you this.
But we're also going to be including Israeli faculty members.
It doesn't say that in the
Israeli-
commitment. Why didn't you include Israeli faculty members when you put out the Deering Meadows agreement?
Because the Deering Meadows agreement, which actually I never called it that, but the Deering Meadows agreement was just a framework of an agreement that was reached with students at 4 o'clock in the morning.
At the pro-Hamas encampment.
If you would like to see the entire program, go on our website, and that will explain it to you, and you will see
No, I'm
it doesn't
asking you about
violate
what the
Title
university
VI.
put out. There is no mention of Israeli students or Israeli faculty. Isn't that the case?
In the agreement that we reached, that there wasn't Israeli students there or Jewish students
Because they weren't
there.
consulted. Isn't that the fact? Jewish and Israeli students were not consulted.
Jewish and Israeli students were not consulted with
Exactly.
respect to
Yield
the
back.
agreement.
Exactly.
And it would
Yield
have been
back.
impractical to do
expired.
that, Representative Stefanik, with all respect.
Dr. Adams, you're recognized for Mr. Norcross. Mr. Wahlberg, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank you, Madam Chairman. President Schill, your President's Advisory Committee on Preventing Anti-Semitism and Hate recently disbanded after 7 Jewish members of the committee, including its co-chair and a university trustee, resigned in protest of your caving to the encampment's demands. You and your administration had cited the creation of this committee as proof you are working to counter anti-Semitism. But 3 faculty members you appointed to it had objected to the committee's very creation in a letter that downplayed anti-Semitism and defended the phrase "from the river to the sea." At least 2 of them have supported BDS efforts against Israel. Question: why did you believe it was appropriate to appoint faculty members who have defended and made excuses for anti-Semitism and oppressed and opposed the committee's purported mission of combating anti-Semitism?
Thank you for your question, Congressman Wahlberg. The number one, I'd like to just address the premise of your question. The 7 members who resigned from the committee resigned for 2 reasons. They were unable to reach consensus about what anti-Semitism was.
How could they reach consensus if you have people already having made clear statements that were anti-Semitic, that spoke for BDS and said that "from the river to the sea" is a good statement?
And they resigned because they were not consulted with respect to the negotiations.
Surprise,
they
surprise.
did not resign. I'm sorry.
Let me
Go.
ask you, will you commit to keeping off those type of members of a committee if you reconstitute this committee as you say you're going to do?
I will be appointing to the task force that we are going to create faculty, staff, administrators who I believe are committed to fighting anti-Semitism and as committed to fighting anti-Semitism as I am.
We'll be watching. President Schill, one of the advisory committee members, Jessica Weniger, has been a leader of academic boycott efforts against Israel. She's also referred to, and I quote, Zionist media and condemned, quote, white liberal dialogue politics, and she signed a petition defending a Palestinian terrorist who murdered 2 Israeli college students in a bombing. Do you acknowledge Professor Weniger as grossly unfit for a committee meant to combat anti-Semitism?
I do not believe in the BDS movement. I am in print against it at my previous university, and I will not be discussing individual faculty members or
so
the
you won't
writing.
say that a person like her, let's forget her name, but a person with her principles will not be on this commission?
I will be appointing people to the committee who are committed to fighting anti-Semitism.
Your record isn't that way. You also appointed a leader of Northwestern's Middle Eastern and North African Student Association to the advisory committee, despite the fact that in the days after October 7th, the MENA Student Association released a statement explicitly supporting the terrorist attack, saying this, and I quote, "We resoundingly support Palestinian resistance to over 75 years of Israeli state-sanctioned violence and calling the terrorists killed in the attack martyrs." Do you agree these comments are shocking and beyond the pale?
I will not be commenting, and certainly not commenting on any student in what students
I think we're hearing that there's no change going to take place at Northwestern University relative to anti-Semitism. How could you possibly appoint a student who supported the October 7th terrorist attack to a committee meant to combat anti-Semitism?
I'm not going to comment on the speech of our students or our faculty or our staff. What I will say is that committee was a committee that wasn't just anti-Semitism. We tried to do something which actually turned out to be impossible.
We saw that very clearly. Let me just finish this. I think we've heard your response. In March, the advisory committee hosted University of Michigan professor Juan Cole to speak on Islamophobia and, quote, anti-Arab and anti-Palestinian biases. Fine. But Cole has made numerous anti-Semitic statements, including claiming that Israel, quote, was founded on a formal racial supremacist principle that Jews must rule the state. And that, quote, the only thing that Palestinians and their sympathizers can do to make Zionists happy is to bend over and allow themselves to be royally screwed. What kind of committee on anti-Semitism invites an anti-Semite like this to speak? And with that, sadly, I end my questioning. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Kiley, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
President Shalvik, earlier today the question was posed, are chants of From the River to the Sea anti-Semitic? And Professor Scheitzer, head of the Anti-Semitism Task Force at Columbia State University, gave a very clear answer. Yes. You, on the other hand, hemmed and hawed, and then eventually said, I hear them as such, some people don't. What are you talking about there? Who are these people that you're referring to?
Well, I think even surveys by the Anti-Defamation League and others have shown that some Jewish people don't hear that as anti-Semitic, whereas I would say the majority do. So it's one of those phrases that is heard differently by.
So that's who you're referring to is the Jewish population, some sector of it?
Yeah, yes, and I have received letters from our Jewish faculty who say that they also don't think it is anti-Semitic. But I think Congressman, I think you put your finger on a challenging issue. We have sent a message to our community. All of the deans of Columbia University, all 17 of them for the first time, wrote a letter to the community saying, these words are hurtful and are heard in a hurtful
that's good,
way.
and I'm glad that Professor Scheitzer was able to give us a very clear answer, yes, but you weren't able to do so. And I think if I were to go through a number of other racial slurs and ask you if those are offensive, if these are racist, I don't think you'd say, I hear them as such, some people don't, would you?
I'm happy to give you my personal opinion, but I think the question that you're really asking me is, are they forbidden to be said at Columbia?
That's not what I'm asking, actually.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'm happy
I think
to give
we
you...
saw your instinct is that I'm wondering, who are you worried about offending? That's my question.
No. I feel like I'm speaking as president of Columbia, so that's the way in which I'm answering
let's talk
these
about
questions.
Columbia. Are there anti-Semitic professors on your faculty?
I certainly hope not, and if I have any evidence that there are, there will be consequences.
You don't think there's evidence of anti-Semitism among professors on your faculty?
We have seen some cases, and there have been consequences.
So you mentioned Mr. Abdu and Mr. Masad. You said they're both under investigation. Is that correct?
Mr. Masad is under investigation. Mr. Abdu has been told he will not work at Columbia again.
He's been fired.
He is leaving.
I don't understand the distinction there. Fired versus he's leaving.
Yeah, no, he's leaving, and he has a written record on his record that
so
says
he wasn't
will not
fired,
be
but he's
employed.
voluntarily leaving.
No. He's been told he cannot.
has to leave.
He has been told he has to leave.
Okay. Do you think he is anti-Semitic?
You know, he has written and said things which are in support of Hamas, which I find very problematic. And
When, by the way, was he told to leave?
I want to make sure I have the right date for you, but it was in the sometime in the last few weeks is my recollection.
In
but
the last how long?
I'd be happy to get it to you in writing because I want to make sure I give you the right date.
Did you retain counsel in preparation for this hearing?
We had lots of, we did a lot of preparation for this hearing, yes.
Okay. How many hours did you say you spent preparing?
Well, this is a very, very serious matter, and so I have spent many, many hours.
Many hours. And you've given us very divergent responses as to some of the worst offending professors about how they've been handled. Why is that? Why can't you just give us the facts?
I've offered to give you the facts. I'm happy to provide you with the details. I just don't recall the exact date when he was notified, and I want to make sure I give you an accurate answer. It's a very serious matter.
Would you be willing to make just a statement right now to any members of the faculty at your university that if they engage in anti-Semitic words or conduct, that they should find another place to work? Can you make that statement?
I would be happy to make a statement that any faculty member at Columbia who behaves in an anti-Semitic way or in any way a discriminatory way should find somewhere else to go.
Thank you. Do you believe that the BDS movement is anti-Semitic?
Columbia has on numerous occasions refused to, sorry, that's not the right way, has faced the issue of BDS. In fact, we had a proposal.
But do you think it's anti-Semitic,
recently.
The BDS movement?
I think it's a political movement that is advocating a boycott or a sanctioning process, which is.
So once again, who are you worried about offending by making a very clear statement on this?
No, I'm not making. I'm happy to make a clear statement on it.
Okay. Well, I want to close my questioning by giving you an opportunity to address some of the students who are here, because we have some really courageous students who have come, who have testified, who have met with our committee, who were at our press conference this morning. Many of them behind you. Many of them couldn't get into the room because it was too small, and they've told harrowing stories of what they've endured on your campus, and they say that the response of your administration has been inadequate, has been insufficient. So are they wrong? I mean, what would you say to these students?
I have met with these students myself. In fact, I've met many of the students who are in this room, and we have talked about it. And I think I have assured them that there are times when I have been very frustrated with the policies and capacity that we have at Columbia to respond to this, but I have been working tirelessly to fix those problems and improve our response. And I think we can show concrete improvements in the way we've been handling anti-Semitism during my time.
Ms. Sonnier, Mrs. McLean, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here today to discuss this very important topic. But I think we have to go back to the beginning, and we have to identify the problem before we can really figure out solutions to the problem. So I want to start with you, Dr. Shafiq. What is your definition of anti-Semitism?
For me personally, any discrimination against people for their Jewish faith is anti-Semitism.
Okay, I appreciate that. You set up a task force. Do they share that same definition?
Congresswoman, I know the chair of our task force is sitting next to me.
You're the president. I'd like to hear from you first.
I'm happy to answer the question, but I know he would also
and I'm happy to do that, but I'd like to start with you, since you are the president, right? You own, the buck stops with you, right?
Completely.
Do they share that same definition?
I'm pretty sure that they would share that definition.
Don't you think that would be a pretty important thing to start with?
Yes.
Okay. Are you concerned at all about the article by Sharon Otterman, which indicated that a Columbia University task force set up to combat anti-Semitism on campus in the wake of October 7th Hamas attack is attempting to avoid one of the most contentious issues in universities' debate over the war? Its members, this is, now I don't know if it's true or not, so I'd like to get your take. Its members have refused to settle on what the definition of anti-Semitism is. So from your opinion, this is an inaccurate article?
Yes, and
Okay, thank you.
Professor Shizer would be the best person to give you
I appreciate that.
the details.
So, Professor, thank you. Do you have a definition of anti-Semitism?
Absolutely.
Okay, can you share it with us?
Sure. It's bias against Jewish people, which can manifest as ethnic slurs, stereotyping, Holocaust denial, double standards as applies to Israel, and anti-Semitic tropes.
Wonderful, I appreciate that. So this article is in fact false?
It is inaccurate, yes.
Okay, thank you. I think we need to really take a look at the facts. So now that we have a clear, defined definition of what it is, what I'm curious now is what are the consequences to one's actions? Ms. Shafiq, Dr. Shafiq, can you share with us what the consequences are?
The consequences for anti-Semitic behavior.
I'm sorry?
The consequences for anti-Semitic behavior.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So we have, one of the biggest things we focused on is we want to make it easy so that if there is any anti-Semitic incident at Columbia, we know about it immediately. We have QR codes all over the campus.
Okay.
We have a hotline. We have a single
And what
website
is,
for
and that's
reporting.
that's a great, I'm looking for an answer though.
Yeah.
What are the consequences for anti-Semitic behavior?
Yes. So once we know of an incident, we have investigative capacity. We've invested hugely in expanding that investigative capacity.
Okay.
And depending on the nature of the incident, there are consequences ranging from people being potentially suspended, being forced to get educated and trained about anti-Semitism.
Wonderful. And we've executed those.
So we are executing
Okay.
those, yes.
So my question to you, are mobs shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, or long live the infantata, are those anti-Semitic comments?
When I hear those terms, I find them very upsetting. And I have heard...
That's a great answer to a question I didn't ask, so let me repeat the question. When mobs or people are shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free, or long live the infantata, are those anti-Semitic statements? Yes or no? It's not how you feel, it's...
I hear them as such. Some people don't. We have sent a clear message.
So is that yes?
We have sent a clear message to our
I'm
community.
not asking about the message. Yeah. Is that fall under definition of anti-Semitic behavior? Yes or no? Why is it so tough?
Because it's a difficult issue because
I realize it's a
some people hear
difficult
it as
issue,
anti-Semitic,
but here's
other
the
people
problem,
do not.
is when people can't answer a simple question and they have a definition, but then they can't, well, I'm not really sure if that qualifies.
So
I'm asking a simple question. Maybe I should ask your task force. Does that qualify as anti-Semitic behavior, those statements? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Do you agree with your task force?
Yeah, we agree. The question is
yes,
what.
So the question.
what
So
to do
yes,
about
you
it.
do agree that that is anti-Semitic behavior, and there should be some consequences to that anti-Semitic behavior. We're in agreement. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I yield my time.
Ms. Stefanik, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I want to follow up on my colleague, Rep. Wahlberg's question regarding Professor Joseph Massad. So let me be clear, President, that he was spoken to. Who spoke with him?
He was spoken to by his head of department and his dean.
And what was he told?
I was not in those conversations. I think.
But
he
you're
was
not
told
aware
that
what he was
that
told?
language
What
was
was he told?
unacceptable.
What was he told?
That language was unacceptable.
And were there any other enforcement actions taken? Any other disciplinary actions taken?
In his case, he has not repeated anything like that ever since.
Does he need to repeat stating that the massacre of Israeli civilians was awesome? Does he need to repeat his participation in an unauthorized pro-Hamas demonstration on April 4th? You know, Professor David Schizzer talked about the lack of enforcement. Do you agree that this is an issue with a lack of enforcement? When the policy of Columbia specifically stated on April 5th said, I want to make clear that it is absolutely unacceptable for any member of this community to promote the use of terror or violence, and yet you have no action, no disciplinary action. Do you agree with how the university has handled this?
Yeah, we have 4,700 faculty at Columbia. most of whom spend all of their time dedicated to teaching their students.
But I'm talking about the faculty members who are supporting terror, and it's not just that case. Let me bring your attention to Muhammad Abdu, who was hired after the October 7th terrorist attack against Israel. He, on October 11th, posted, "Yes, I'm with Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad." He also decried false reports accusing Arabs and Muslims of decapitating the heads of children and being rapists. We know that there were decapitations of babies, of innocent Israeli citizens, of seniors, of women. There were rapes, and yet Columbia hired this individual as a professor. How did that hiring process work? Were you aware of those statements before the hiring?
I share with you your repugnance at those remarks. I completely understand that. On my watch, faculty who make remarks that cross the line in terms of anti-Semitism, there will be consequences for them.
What are the consequences in this case?
I have 5 cases at the moment who have either been either taken out of the classroom or dismissed.
And is he one of those?
He will never work at Columbia again.
So he has been terminated?
He has been terminated. And not just terminated, but his files will show that he will never work at Columbia again.
So he's currently not employed by Columbia?
He is grading his students' papers and will never teach at Columbia again, and that will be on his permanent
How
record.
are you changing the hiring processes? Because on your watch, he was hired after he made these statements publicly. How are you ensuring this does not happen with your hiring process moving forward?
So when we hire people, obviously they have to meet the academic qualifications, but we do an employment check and a criminal record check. We also ask everyone to do an attestation that they have never been accused of discrimination or part of an investigation around harassment or discrimination. And that attestation has to be signed by all new employees.
And it didn't work in this case?
I think in this case, well, he may not have been subject to an investigation on discrimination or found guilty. It has to be found guilty.
But don't you think it's a problem
qualified.
when the hiring process of Columbia is hiring someone who makes those statements and they
I
hire
agree
him
with you.
after making those statements?
I agree with you that I think we need to look at how to toughen up those requirements. We do have a requirement, but I agree with you. I think we need to look at how we can make them
Let me
more
ask about
effective.
Professor Catherine Frank from the Columbia Law School, who said that all Israeli students who have served in the IDF are dangerous and shouldn't be on campus. What disciplinary action has been taken against that professor?
I agree with you that those comments are completely unacceptable and discriminatory.
But I'm asking you what disciplinary action has been taken.
She has been spoken to by a very senior person in the administration, and she has said that that was not what she intended to say.
And has she publicly apologized?
I have suggested that.
You have suggested that? Has she done that?
I think she will be finding a way to clarify her position.
You see the concern here, though, with the lack of enforcement. You see the concern that speaking to these professors is not enough, and it's sending a message across the university that this is tolerated, these anti-Semitic statements from a position of authority in professors in the classroom is tolerated. My time has expired, but I will have multiple rounds of questions. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Bonamici. Ms. Stefanik, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
President Schill, the ADL released its report card for universities' responses to anti-Semitism, and you're aware that Northwestern was the only university whose grade was downgraded, correct?
Yes, I am aware of that.
And isn't it also true that the Northwestern earned an F for your failure to respond and combat anti-Semitism, and they called for your resignation? Is that correct?
I have great respect for the ADL.
I'm not asking your respect for the ADL. I'm asking, is it a fact that you earned an F and they called for your resignation?
I have great respect for the ADL. I am sad that they gave Northwestern
But
an
it's
F.
true. You got an F. Yes. Moving on. Let me tell you why you earned an F. I want to discuss what has been referred to as the Deering-Meadows Agreement, your unilateral capitulation to the pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic encampment. But let's talk about what has occurred on this encampment. Isn't it true that a Jewish Northwestern student was assaulted?
So I want to question the premise of your question.
No. I'm asking the questions. You're answering. Wasn't
My
it true?
answer
No.
is it is not a capitulation.
I'm asking the question. You're required to answer. Isn't it true that a Jewish Northwestern student was assaulted?
There are allegations that a Jewish student was assaulted. We are investigating those allegations.
Isn't it true that a Jewish student was verbally harassed and stalked to Hillel?
There are allegations of that sort, and we are investigating them.
Isn't it true that a Jewish student wearing a yarmulke was spat on?
All of these are allegations that are being investigated.
How long are these investigations going to occur?
Well, if you remember, the encampment was up just a few weeks ago. So we believe at Northwestern in due process. We believe in investigations. We believe.
So when are the investigations going to be finalized?
I'm not going to be able to tell you that. They'll be finalized when the Conduct Office and the Title VI Office, which are well on this issue.
This is why you've earned an F. Isn't it true that a Jewish student was told to, quote, go back to Germany and get gassed, end quote?
I've heard that alleged. Again, it is being investigated. We will investigate any claim of discrimination or harassment.
But it is a fact. You said that there have been 0 suspensions, 0 expulsions.
Thus far, with lots of investigations on their way.
You said something that was very important. You said we did not give in to demands, but the commitments we made as part of the Deering-Meadows agreement. You said the word commitments. Let me talk about those commitments. One of those commitments was funding 2 visiting Palestinian faculty for 2 years. Is that true?
This is part of a program that we have had. We have used it with Afghanistan, Ukraine. It's for war-torn
But isn't it true? I'm asking
countries.
you. Okay. The other one is you will fund the full cost for 5 Palestinian undergrads.
That is also part of the program sponsored by our Buffett Institute. It is not a new program. It exists for people whose education and research has been interrupted.
It was announced as part of the Deering-Meadows agreement. Is that correct?
It was it was a goal set forth in the Deering-Meadows agreement. It will also include people from Israel.
Who was consulted when you embarked on the Deering-Meadows agreement? Was the President's Advisory Committee on Preventing Anti-Semitism and Hate consulted?
That was not within the purview of the anti-Semitism and other forms of hate committee.
Was Northwestern's Board of Trustees consulted?
The chair of our board was consulted.
But not the entire Board of Trustees?
Our Board of Trustees has over 120 members.
And isn't it a fact that members of the Board of Trustees expressed dissatisfaction with your failure to consult them?
There's been some members of our Board of Trustees who have expressed dissatisfaction that they were not part of the decision-making.
Did you consult with the General Counsel of Northwestern or an outside counsel on the Deering-Meadows agreement before it was agreed to?
Yes.
Are you aware that board members asked you this question and you said that you had not
Not
consulted?
the outside counsel. The general counsel of the university was part of my team managing this problem.
Did you consult with 2 members of the advisory committee that I referenced previously, the anti-Israel professor Jessica Winiger and the Kellogg professor Nor Katili? Were they consulted on the Deering-Meadows agreement?
I consulted with several members, including them, but also including the Hillel director, and also including the chair of the
Let's talk about the Hillel
committee.
director consultation. Isn't it true that you asked the Hillel director whether it was possible to hire an anti-Zionist head of Hillel, rabbi?
I did not. I absolutely did not. I would never hire anyone based upon their views of being Zionist or anti-Zionist. That is not what I do. That's not what a great
That's not according to the
university
whistleblowers that have come forward to this committee.
I can't say who has talked to you or not talked to you, but I can tell you
I can assure you
the
many people
truth.
have spoke to this committee.
Thank you.
Under Committee Rule 9, we will now question witnesses under the 5-minute rule. I remind members that I'll enforce the 5-minute rule strictly, so you're advised to keep your questions succinct so the witnesses have time to answer. I will begin the questioning. Dr. Shafiq, you described the April 4, quote, all out for Al-Shifa, end quote, event that took place at Columbia's campus as a, quote, unapproved event near academic buildings in violation of our rules and policies, end quote. You promised that participants would, quote, face discipline, end quote. Your university policy requires disciplinary action to be initiated shortly after an incident occurs. According to records provided by Columbia to the committee, the school identified at least 32 participants at the event and sent out, quote, interim warning letters to them, quote, to remind you of Columbia's policies, end quote. Is that what you meant by facing discipline?
Chairwoman, I want to confirm that yes, we did send warning letters. We developed, in consultation with our anti-Semitism task force, a new demonstration policy which clarified what would happen to students who attended unsanctioned events. And that policy, that we also worked with our faculty and students on, has a hierarchy of punishments. Anyone who attends an unsanctioned event is immediately sent a warning letter, and if it's as an immediate action. If other sorts of misconduct occur at such an event, there could be further sanctions.
Okay, let me follow up on that then. If sending warning letters is discipline, has Columbia sent out warning letters following the dozens of other unapproved events that have occurred since October 7th?
Since we've had this new policy in place, yes, I would confirm that we have sent, and those letters are sent out immediately. Those letters, if there have been repeat offenses, stay permanently on the record of those students for the rest of their time at Columbia. And of course, if other misconduct occurs, it can lead to suspension and, in extreme cases, expulsion.
Well, how can we be confident that you'll restore order in a safe learning environment if it took you months to send warning letters?
Chairwoman, I want to reassure you, I have absolutely no hesitation in enforcing our policies. When I first started at Columbia, our policies, our systems, and our enforcement mechanisms were not up to the scale of this challenge.
Okay.
They were designed for a very different world. They were designed for a student cheating on an exam.
Let's go to the April 4th when you did have policies in effect. So the day before the April 4th rally, a Columbia University Apartheid Divest Substack post warned participants to wear masks, cover any identifying features, and not swipe their Columbia IDs to evade accountability for disciplinary violations. What discipline has Columbia imposed to address the group's leaders, instructing students how to break the rules? Because you can tell by their being on the Substack who they are.
Mm. I think one of the most effective things that we have done since since October 7th, is that when we know that events will happen, we have moved toward requiring Columbia University IDs to access our campus. That has prevented outside forces to come and cause trouble, and I think that's a very important reason why most of our demonstrations, in fact the vast majority, have been safe. And
but
we
one
did
of
so
those
on that
students,
occasion.
one of those organizers and speaker at this unapproved pro-Hamas rally was a student already suspended for hosting an affiliate of a terrorist organization. Do you agree that this continued defiance further aggravates the severity of the violations by the suspended students, as well as the group organizing the event? Because the students don't seem to be afraid of your letters.
Chairwoman, I assure you, the students are not getting letters. As has previously been said, we have already suspended 15 students from Columbia. We have 6 on disciplinary probation. These are more disciplinary actions that have been taken probably in the last decade at Columbia. And I promise you, from the messages I'm hearing from students, they are getting the message that violations of our policies will have consequences.
Thank you. Mr. Greenwald, the trustees at Columbia are ultimately responsible for Columbia's governance. All of us have seen the true nature of the environment at Columbia exposed. Can you honestly say that you and the board fulfill the trust placed in you to maintain the good character of Columbia when you see the repeated screams of hate on your campus?
The anti-Semitism on our campus makes me sick to my stomach. And we are taking steps to address it.
Thank you. Mr. Chicano, Mr. Wahlberg, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the panel for being here. The day after the October 7th attack, Professor Joseph Massad, and I only single him out amongst numerous others that I could single out, because he particularly is a tenured professor and chairs the School of Arts and Sciences Academic Review Committee. He wrote in an article praising, and I quote him, "the innovative Palestinian resistance," end quote, for attacking Israel and glorifying Hamas's slaughter of nearly 1,200 Jews as, and I quote again, "awesome, astonishing, astounding, and incredible." What perverse statements. A tenured professor who's been saying these type of things for 20 years at Columbia. President Shafiq, you recently said, and I quote, "It is absolutely unacceptable for any member of the Columbia community to promote the use of terror and violence," end quote. Do you condemn Professor Massad's statement, and has he faced any consequences for it?
Congressman, I do condemn his statement. I am appalled by what he said.
Any consequences?
He has been spoken to.
Spoken
and I
to?
should just, and I think you could.
So support of terrorism is acceptable if you're a Columbia professor?
Not at all. And I should say,
he's been spoken to.
I didn't get to.
I have your answer.
No.
Let me move on here. Professor Massad has also been known to have called Israelis, quote, "cruel and bloodthirsty colonizers," end quote, and foreigners who joined the Israeli military as, quote, "baby-killing Zionist Jewish volunteers for Israeli Jewish supremacy," end quote. In 2005, an investigation by Columbia corroborated allegations that Massad yelled at a Jewish student who questioned his views to, quote, "get out of my classroom." Can you imagine free speech, diversity on campus? Well, let's move it over. Let's intentionally disregard the feelings of a Jewish student as being less than human in this classroom to someone like myself who might be given this to wear to remember and bring home the hostages now, to quietly take it off so my professor wouldn't see it, a professor who holds my academic career in the palm of his hands. That's free speech. That's diversity. President Shafiq, I'm concerned that that isn't happening here. So let me ask this question. As the chair of the School of Arts and Sciences Academic Review Committee, Professor Massad is responsible for, quote, overseeing the periodic review of all departments, centers, and institutes in the school. Do you stand behind Professor Massad remaining chair of the Academic Review Committee, giving his support for terrorism and harassing Jewish students?
Congressman Wahlberg, I just want to confirm that when faculty behave in any discriminatory fashion at Columbia,
you talk to them.
There are consequences. No, we take them out of the classroom if necessary. We
Is he out of the classroom?
From leadership posts if necessary. We allow students to leave those classes if they feel at all uncomfortable.
Is he out of the classroom?
He is. I believe, to answer your question, he is no longer chair of that committee and does not have a leadership role.
But not out of the classroom. Let me move over to the trustees. As trustees, would you approve Professor Massad for tenure if the decision were before you today?
I would not.
Nor would I.
Then why is he still in the classroom? You are trustees of this preeminent institution of diversity, of free thought, and you talk to professors who make horrific statements like this. And as I said, I could have addressed other professors. You, in fact, even pointed out that there were numerous professors that you're looking at right now. If they're only going to get a talking to, I'm concerned. I yield back.